So our workshop is crafting WAC equity white papers in your discipline, and it has sort of two goals. One goal is that we've started a new white paper series through AWAC that addresses ways of incorporating equity and conversations of inequity with discipline-specific writing classrooms, but also to have that larger conversation with all of you about what does it mean to sort of incorporate these conversations within our classrooms and within our discipline and within our work. And so we have sort of 3 parts sort of mapped out for you all, very teacher style. We've got breaks built into that 3-hour-long seminar. So we'll go for a good 50, take a 10-minute breather for potty breaks, although go at any time your bladder demands. Water breaks, just a breathing move break. And so we'll do that 3 times today. Foundations of the work and sort of where we are and who we are, considerations for the work and things that we'd like you to consider, and some applications for doing this work on your own. Part of that considerations is actually looking at the materials that we've crafted as a part of the WE series and getting some good feedback from you all. So we really want you to look at these documents and be good, strong peer reviewers. You know, nobody likes that gold star, Johnny, that our students give. So giving us that good critical eye that you all have. And then applications. So we'll go a good 50 minutes, although probably more like 40, but introductions will be smaller because we're smaller. And so I think it'll all work out. We have our Mentimeter. And so you can go to menti.com, or you can just scan the QR code. And folks online, you should be able to do the same. So either go to menti.com or scan that QR code. And we'll get that up in just a moment. Stacy and I are going to do this too, and so you'll have to excuse some of our awkwardness as we get phones going. Thank goodness for COVID for teaching us all how to use our QR scanner. Okay, so we are going to, it should say join our icebreaker with a little heart. Perfect. So once it's there, we're going to jump into the Mentimeter and perfect, and hit present. So first question, if you were a breakfast food item, which one would you be and why? So once you've entered your answer, share your response with your peers. So folks online, you'll want to unmute, please. And there's few enough of you that you can all share. And we'll have the folks here, which is a total of 5 plus Stacy and I, share as well. You can't get into it. Yeah. So if you open your browser and go to menti.com. Yeah. That would be allowed. If you can put your name in, that would be really helpful for us as well, online and face-to-face people, so we can know you a bit. I need to. Of course, Sherry forgot to put her name in after giving the instructions to put your name in. Thanks, Tracy, for following directions. Tracy, as they're coming in, do you want to tell us why your pancakes?
I particularly like what my family calls corn fritters, which are pancakes with corn in them, sort of like if it was a blueberry pancake, but not blueberries, corn. And I just remember having them since we were little. So I've always loved pancakes.
So your pancakes because you're nostalgic?
I guess that's a good way to put it. Yes. So
And
nostalgic.
Southern.
We're actually having them for dinner on Saturday. So there we go.
Just pancakes or corn cakes? Or
With sausage and stuff. We have breakfast for dinner sometimes.
that's a great way to start off whatever this weather is. Thank you.
It's horrible here in Blacksburg. I don't know. You're in Clemson, right?
Yeah, it just rained, so it's just sticky, icky out there.
It's all dreary looking here.
Who is oatmeal and milk? Will you Rosemary, will you tell us you're refreshing and nourishing? Can you tell us a little bit more about that? How are you nourishing?
It's nourishing because it's It's nourishing because it's protein. It's from the milk. Milk is a complete meal. So it's very nourishing. It is light, oatmeal, high in fiber. So it's good for you, good for your digestive system. It's a complete meal.
We've just determined that working with Rosemary is a complete meal. She's nourishing and refreshing. Who is Total Cereal? And will you tell us why, a little bit more about this, full of nutrients and a source of energy?
I like, I think all of us need energy. And I try to manage. The part that got cut off is especially my interactions with others during every day.
Yeah, I like that. Leslie, you are bagel and lox. Nice. So because you're originally from New York, why are you not like a meat, sausage and egg or something like that, or chopped, whatever those names are? I've been to New York once and I ate everything, but I remember none of it.
Because New York City has the best bagels, to my mind. Like,
and so
the
you are the
classic.
best of what you do.
Sure,
Okay.
I could do that.
So you are the best.
Sure.
I
yeah.
like that. I like that.
Thank you for helping.
Teacher energy all day long. Let's see. I love this simplicity of bread and coffee because you can't start a day without them. So I think of all the people who can't start a day without you, Joan. Do you want to say a little bit more?
Yeah, that's how I start my day every day. So I cannot think of any other food items for what I want to be if I'm a breakfast item. So bread here is such a broad term. So that includes croissant, bagel with cream cheese, toast bread, whatever types of bread, I will just take it.
And is your coffee just a black drip coffee or does it get fancy where you are?
Black drip coffee, exactly. I usually have my coffee without any sugar or cream in it so that I can fully awake.
Nice. I like that. I like that.
Thank you.
So mine up there is I'm chilaquiles, which is like saucy tortilla chips with eggs and a big mess. So I'm saucy, like personality wise. And I can't type obviously quickly on my phone, but I'm not liked by everyone. And if you had chilaquiles, they're sort of divisive. And Stacy is eggs.
Yes, I just said because I'm very adaptable, right? And I was sort of thinking like, I better be careful where I go with this, right? Over easy. I mean, this can go really wrong, but yeah, but sometimes scrambled felt real, sunny side up. I didn't even think about that. Yeah, but so yeah, I like to think that I'm adaptable, which is part of my commitment to being inclusive, right? Is being able to be with people in the ways that they are. So you want to be sunny side up with me, I'm right there with you. If you are not happy and you don't like me, okay, like well, I'm there too.
Eggs are such a staple. How do you feel about people being allergic to you, Stacy?
Oh, I mean, that probably happened. That's true.
Yeah, well, that's okay, Louis. Yeah, so please tell us. Andouille sausage.
That's very much in New Orleans.
It is.
And I left New Orleans when I was 17. I won't say how long ago that was.
2 years ago. 2 years ago.
But New Orleans is so much a part of my writing and culture and workshops that I do. So New Orleans is all in there. So that's why I chose Andouille sausage.
So do you find yourself in gumbo a lot, like personally, or like?
I make gumbo and I made it for a men's cook-off fundraiser for my
Oh.
church. And I was happy until a few of the members said they were allergic to shrimp. I couldn't eat my gumbo. I'm like, how dare you be allergic to shrimp?
That's right.
They weren't from Louisiana. You can't be from Louisiana to be allergic to shrimp.
Exactly.
Please, Rosemary.
Speaking of gumbo, for our fundraiser, Jesuit High School, my son's high school, we did gumbo for the fundraiser. You know, when you spoke of shrimp, we are very cognizant that there are some people who are allergic to seafood. So ours was, we use beef and other things, except chicken for it. There was no seafood and everybody loved it. Yes.
Having had vegan gumbo, I do not recommend it. Tino, last but not least, and we'll have Christy as well. So Tino, you have oatmeal with walnuts, which is like so healthy, right up there with oatmeal and milk. But are you doing like a steel cut oatmeal right out the instant box of Quaker Oats? Like, what's your oatmeal and why not walnuts?
Oh, good question. Thank you. I like the old-fashioned oatmeal from the Quaker tube. So on top of my refrigerator, you'll probably find about 5 of them. Because whenever I find them, I buy them, whether I have them or not. And I'll eat them for lunch. I'll eat them for dinner. I am a big fan of nuts in general, walnuts being my favorite. I'm from Colorado, so I'm just right outside of Denver. And I'm always a bit jealous of the squirrels in my yard who are always chewing on something like a nut or seed or something. I swear I could live off of them. I enjoy them so much. But it was originally advised by my doctor, believe it or not, to begin with this breakfast. But what it allows me is to eat big burritos in the afternoon. So healthy breakfast in the morning, big burritos in the afternoon.
I like the visual image of squirrels just chewing on you. I just have to say, like, that's really comforting to me as someone who likes animal violence. Christy, so you say does coffee count as a food? As I tell my students in my food writing class, we consume it. And so, yeah, why not? So it's a food, you're coffee, so you're full of energy and you're piping warm. So you're not an iced coffee girl, and why are you not an iced coffee?
No, I am in the summertime, but it still makes me hot. It's the caffeine more than the natural anxiety that I run on. Yeah. So it's a big joke when I teach classes. I'm like, I'm fine. I'm just normally sweaty and like this. It's fine.
Yeah.
And my students like leaning.
Are you like me and you do the chicken dance in class? I'll just be up there.
Yeah. Fanning.
Yeah. It's good about being in the South is that you always have a fan. You're just like, whether it's your handouts for the day, whether it's like your mother's church fan, you're just gonna have a fan in your pocket at all times. You're well balanced. Add some nuts and you're right there. So we have one more question, y'all. Just to get to know each other, it's 3 hours or so. So our next question is a little bit more kind of serious. What are some of the places you call home, and what are some of your languages? And those terms, home and languages, are quite broad, and so interpret them as you like. And so still in that Mentimeter, you should have seen that screen advance on your phone or on your browser. And we'll do the same sharing out. Be a little bit less chatty on my end. Just a reminder to put your name in It's helpful. I know you writers want to do full sentences, but it is a character count, so short answers is just fine too. As the answers start coming in, I'm struck by poodle as a language. We could see one of your darling babies on your arm. So to count that as something that you speak, I really appreciate that. I'm really struck, Tino, as a native Arizonan myself, by all the things I could like recognize in your homes, and that like balance of also presenting your family in there, right? Like you speak Gomez, you speak this language of your people, like quite literally. We've got Stacy. Well, I'll let you speak for yourself. I've got, maybe this is Joan, about Korean in a linguistic sense. I really love the idea that for you, home is your like childhood home, right? Like not this home that you are now, unless you're in your childhood home. Okay. And so thinking about home as your origin, right?
Mhm.
Home as family. Yeah. And then the Scotty dogs. So you also speak dog.
do.
Is that a different language than poodle?
So they're both very smart dogs, but I think they have different apex. Poodles are trainable for Scotty dogs and
I don't know dogs. That sounds right. And so I'll talk a little bit as the other responses come in. And so I think about home as like a mobile place. So home is where my family is right now. All of my family's in Arizona. I'm nowhere near Arizona in my career or physically right now. And so wherever they are and wherever we meet up. And then I feel especially home in the desert, no matter where that desert is. And even some of the deserts of particularly like high country Arizona, where it looks very green, but precipitation says it's not. I speak Black English, Toddler Babel, and broken standard academic English. I speak other languages, but those are the ones in a day and sometimes in a single conversation I oscillate between.
You're just passing this to me so I can,
Yeah.
I guess. I love the creativity here. My grandmother's art room, I think of home as in like an early sense, like where did I feel really, really comfortable? My grandmother was an art teacher and she took herself to college in her 50s, and it took her many years to get a degree, and then she taught art the rest of her life. And she was my first example of just that kind of like always teach wherever you are to everybody whoever wants to participate. And she had what I like to think is our WAC kind of orientation, which is that everybody's an artist. We're all the time, everybody can do art, right? And it's a learned skill, and everybody can do it in this kind of cool way. And then in terms of languages, Sherry got me thinking about this just in terms of like variations and modifiers on English, right? Like what do I want to claim? What comes to mind quickly? I say non-standard English from home because of thinking of the way I grew up speaking in different ways. But then standardized academic English is kind of my, new default home language in a lot of ways. And then Canadian French a little bit. That's my like heritage language, but I'm the third generation, so I only have a little bit left in some ways. I had to study it in school. And then I'm happy with any mix thereof too. So that's where I'm coming from. Let's see, maybe someone, Tracy, maybe you could say a little, oh no, you already did, Tracy. You know what? I'm gonna hand this back to you because you had the order that you were thinking through and you knew where you were. Yeah.
And so Rosemary here, I love that you put like words we wouldn't necessarily associate with home. So you have love and solace, and like the idea of like comfort as like if it has that is home. But you have for your language custom tradition, not a spoken language. Could you tell us just a little bit about that?
Yes. Because I was just processing the question, and I normally in processing, I will pick out words that I call prompts. For me, the key words in the first part is home. What do I understand by? The second part is language. I've already told you about the first part, home. Not necessarily the physical structure, no, but the things that I've mentioned, if it's people that I've met. And so I'm very adaptable, quickly adaptable. So that's home for me, okay? In terms of language, not the spoken one, no. But instead, it goes beyond. It's the tradition, like in my family. What do we do? What do I instill in my children? That becomes the tradition. They wake up, they know, regardless, if they see an older person, they have to say good morning. That is the tradition, that we have instilled in us, just a glimpse of the thing. So those are the sort of how I categorize language. Yeah.
Yours is so you, Anne. If you haven't met Anne Blakesley and read that, you would have a clear understanding of who Anne Blakesley is. And so like this idea that your profession, your affiliation, and your home place, like that place that you are home, is one and the same in many ways. Like it's all sort of, yeah. And how you build your community.
Yeah, yes. So I really like actually how others expressed it better than how I expressed it, but I was ultimately thinking of relationships. So relationships, obviously with my immediate family, my daughters and my husband, less so our dog, but those of you who know me know that story too. But in a larger community, because I really identify within that community and am really involved, I should have said Ypsilanti as well. And then my institutional sort of home and those relationships, and then professional relationships, obviously. And then, yes, and I really like what everyone else is saying about language too. But so pretty standard there.
Yeah. Just a couple of more and we'll get to workshopping, but I think this part is really necessary whenever you're working with people on equity stuff, because identity and who we are and how we enter the classroom and how we enter the writing space is so intricately tied together. And so sometimes I think this can feel time wasting, or you can sort of do what my students do and they just wait for their turn to come around. So they're like on their phones or asleep. But for me, equity work and identity work have to come together. And so then we have Leslie giving us everything all at once. So back to New York, but then as a biologist and as a Senate academic speaker, and that cooking as language, which I'm super excited about. So you don't cook bagels and lox.
No,
So
I don't make lox, no.
you could make lox.
I
That's
could,
true.
I
You
know.
could. Could you tell us a little bit about that cooking love language and how that like comes together?
So I mean, when I heard language, I was just thinking, for some reason, I was thinking, so I speak, I guess, standard academic English or American English, and but I have a graduate degree in biology, so most of my discipline my home base, I guess, would be like biology, but but it also made me think of love languages. There, I can't remember who's the Guttermans or something like. There's the 5 love languages. How do you express your love towards people? And some people have told me it's my cook. I mean, like I do it through cooking. So that's what I was thinking of.
And then Lewis, our tech savvy consultant from Louisiana, what's home for you?
Home is always going to be New Orleans, but I moved to Minnesota, the Twin Cities, 30 years ago, and reluctantly, I have to admit that that's home because that's where my family, my family is, my immediate family members are, and I even moved up a cousin to Minnesota. So I guess I have to admit that Minnesota is kind of home, but it hurts to say it. Yeah, yeah. It hurts to say it, but that is home. Yes.
These secondary and tertiary homes is really fascinating. Stacey and I are gonna speed through a little bit some of our facilitator-based introductions because we've shared so much about ourselves already. But we'll give you just a very Cliff Notes version. I don't know what the kids are using these days. We use Cliff Notes. What do they use? Chat GPT version. That hurt. And so it's doing magic. And then if you make it full screen, I think it's okay. Can you guys see the slides online? Okay, perfect. So I think we shared a bit about who we are personally, professionally. I think we'll get to a little bit more as well when we talk about some of the work that we've done so far. Thinking about powers and privileges is always tough. I really wanted this here. I'm not regretting it, but if you've met me, you know that I could talk forever about powers and privileges. I would say that mine is briefly like someone who has studied this stuff and lived this equity stuff my entire life. And so I think a particular power and privilege that I have is that when I enter these conversations, enter these spaces, it's not new knowledge for me. Just a month ago, I gave a talk on anti-racist pedagogy, and the associate dean called me an expert. And I was like, I don't know who you're talking about, but sure, give me those professional development funds for a 20-minute talk. But really thinking about, like, that's a power and a privilege that I have, is that the murder of George Floyd and far too many others in 2020 was not a wake-up call for me. It was simply my life on screen.
Sherry did the wording of this question, and I immediately started thinking about maybe a little bit along the lines of what Rosemary was saying of powers. Is that like superpower? Is that power in the sense of, institutional, like the fact that maybe it cuts more than one way? And, I will say that this is not new work for me, but I'm very aware too that I had to and continue to come to the process of what are my blind spots as a white person, and particularly in our fields as a straight white woman. I sort of embody the average demographic characteristics of English departments and writing departments nationwide in a lot of ways. So maybe that is certainly privilege, and that certainly works in give me all kinds of privileges I'm aware of and not aware of. But it also it has also made me realize that it has shaped my commitment that what should white people do with equity work, especially if we're talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion together. And my answer to that is very clearly, we should educate other white people. So my job is to, I think where I can be most useful is to continue on my process of thinking about my powers and my privileges, but also doing so with and for other people who also identify as white, and really thinking about learning from that. So it's funny, I'm going to 3, 4, and 5 together. But I will say, as an academic faculty, I'm a non-tenure track continuing faculty. And so there's some interesting things about, I'm both the director of writing, but I'm not tenure track. And so that puts me in some complicated positions sometimes at my institution, for instance. Do you want to go back and forth? We didn't decide.
No, I think it's okay. 4 and 5 are interesting to me because I wrote 5 and Stacey was like, but we have good things too. And I was like, yeah, I guess. And so, I think some of my strengths is like I try to be a really good listener while also like shutting nonsense down really effectively. Like I don't have a lot of patience for nonsense, to the, sadness of my students sometimes and my colleagues sometimes. But I think like one of my core commitments to think about number 4 here is a commitment to take people in that journey with me. So I'm very much about uplifting folks, but also like I will drag people across thresholds if I need to. And it's my commitment to take sometimes unwilling bodies on the journey that I'm on and that I want them to be on. And I think that in combination with my strength, and my like upbringing of coming from a first generation welfare family in the ghettos of Phoenix, like really thinking about what our institutions and what writing means, for all students on this side of the PhD and on the side of not that. I have other things to say, but
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'll try to take these questions together kind of briefly, and kind of toggle back and forth. So I'll say one of my commitments, for example, is to, when and how is helpful, trying to really undo a lot of the pain and unfortunately really denigrating experiences with language and with writing with students, right? It's so many of the students I meet have so many negative associations with anything associated with language and writing teaching. And so one of my commitments is really to try to be a different kind of writing or language oriented teacher for students, but also to be committed to learning from students about what they already know, right? And what do they already know about their language and about their own writing and who they are and why they're in college and why they're doing what they need to do. So I should say, and we put this in a footnote, but I'm at a small liberal arts college. It's a private school. It's a very expensive school. That really shapes my context. And I'm really aware of all of the many hoops that students jump through in order to get there. But also that so many of them have really bad experiences from K-12, basically, that they're kind of, I'm meeting them with this experience. So one of my commitments is that learning and that undoing any of that and having a different model for them if that's what is needed or helpful. I think that I also have some insight into neurodiversity. I'm someone with learning disabilities and learning differences. And so it took me a long time to realize, oh, this is part of the conversation too, and not to be, right? So just different ways of thinking and trying to think really intersectionally about some of the ways in which I am less privileged in some situations than others. And that is true for all of us a little, right? There are the levels and amounts of experiences that we have change in the different environments we're in. I think though that my main oversight, weakness, bias just comes from my privilege. I think it's pretty straightforward. I would say that being a white woman with a lot of educational privilege, many, many years of school, makes me just unable to see things without really working on it in a lot of ways that relate to, I think, education in particular.
yeah, I think like the inverse of that is like my oversights, weaknesses, and biases is that it's largely that I don't have patience for nonsense. Like I want action, I want answers, I want people to be on the other side of this hard stuff. I want people to be happy to be uncomfortable, and I get really frustrated when people are like, I like my comfortable space, and I'm like, well, that's nice. That's really good for you. You must not be another body in this world in any fashion. And if you are, then you have been uncomfortable in your life in some way. And so thinking about how that translates to doing inclusive work, work on belonging, work on access, work on DEI, whatever buzzword we're working with today, this week. So yeah, I think that's definitely one of my oversights. I'm like, why don't you know this? Why is it hard for you? And I have to always stop and be like, oh yeah, because you're not a fat Black woman from Arizona who has all the experiences that I have. Wait a minute. And so I struggle with that sometimes.
I think we make a good team in some ways because our insights, our strengths, our biases, there's some complementary ways. Like the longer I've been in this work, the more patient and quiet I get, which I think is what should happen, right?
I'm working on that.
Well, well, but that's also your strength. That's your strength though. And we can't both be all quiet or all yelling all the time, right? I mean, it's like, but I kind of like the impatience is needed also, right? Because I mean, otherwise there is a lot of coddling of just the status quo.
I think you're right about that. I think too, like, again, back to identity work, and you'll see this a little bit in the document we'll share with you. I think our identities and our experiences absolutely inform our approaches to this work. And so what is home? What is language? What breakfast food are you? How you see yourself, right? Like those things perhaps can help you understand your orientation to doing equity work, right? Like what are you bringing in? What's at the table for you already when you sit down and start thinking about equitable practices? You can read this.
Okay.
Yeah, that's perfect. And
For the folks online.
Sure, sure. I had to catch myself. Your name again? Sherry, when you were introducing yourself, because both my wife and my female bodied child are full figured. And when you said fat, I would say, don't say fat, say Rubenesque, say grand, say plus size. I'll cover all these other words, and I realized that's my thing. And I always tell people you can't tell folks how to identify themselves. But I think because my wife, my female bodied child, who is non-binary, I have to, because they are big folk, and that I was feeling to not use the F word. And I said, but I can't tell her how to, this is an adult, educated, grown woman teaching me. I can't tell the difference. But I wanted to say that was my own, that's what I was feeling. And I also wanted to thank you because you made a point that as a white person, you have to talk to other white folks. That is so true. One of the famous stories is that Malcolm X once told a white young woman at Harvard. She asked him, what could she do to help the movement? And he famously told her nothing. But Malcolm later said that he regretted saying that to her because everyone can do something. And some people can reach different folk, and you can reach people that I can't reach. So thank you for doing that. And even Malcolm X grew and evolved. So anyway. Yes.
I really want to thank you for what you have just said, Stacy. The reason is this: for our February Black History Month, we had a panel in my university, a little background as regards my college and my university. It's a very privileged, very new California North State University, mostly medical doctors, pharmacists, dentists, those type healthcare providers. So our students come to us from very, very privileged background. 2 parents, medical doctors, so they don't have any problem with paying. Our clientele, our student body, is about 85 to 90% Asian. Okay, I don't think many of you have that, but that's our clientele. Now, for Black History Month, of course, you can quickly tell that there are not many Black people in that, let alone faculty, okay? I am a chemistry professor, so I was one of the panelists, and in picking people for the panel, we had a panel discussion. Speak from your experience type of. The student government wanted that. They wanted to reach out to a wider audience, this audience that many have never had a Black teacher, any other teacher except white, okay, from privileged background. Then when the other professor and myself, who were putting together people for the panel, what would you have expected? If I take a census, many of you would say they should be all Black people. We said, no, no, you will be missing. You have been doing that. You would see you are missing the majority of the people that should hear this story. They should be people that they can relate to, they see and see themselves. We put a white woman on the panel and we put an Asian on the panel. There were red flags. Rosemary, did you say this is Black History Month panel? We said, yeah. Of course, I already knew what they had there, preconceived ideas as to what it should be. So I said, yeah. They said, oh, I was just making sure because of the people that you have on the panel. I said, yeah, those are messengers that will be taking the message to the people that need to hear, and they will listen. More than the same old people saying the same message. Thank you for seeing that. We do it. And it was very effective because, like I told you, our student population never, and you may think it's only the white people that have prejudice. No, no, no. Those people needed to hear it. Thank you.
What a beautiful story, Rosemary. Thank you so much. And thank you, Louis. I use fat deliberately, so I appreciate some interrogation of that and some thoughts about that. We're gonna change the schedule just a tiny bit. We're gonna break right now because we're just a little bit past our scheduled break time. And then we'll come back and do an activity and shift and to look, touching base with these questions and doing a little bit of writing and letting you guys, give you a chance to get up and write. So we're gonna take just a little mini break. It is 12:54. So if we could, we'll shrink that meeting, that break a little bit, and let's reconvene at 1 o'clock. So 6 minutes instead of our planned 10. Okay. There's water and coffee and pretzels and doggies. Bananas. We have had a new addition in the room, my online folks and my face-to-face folks. We have Dylan Winters from UC Colorado Springs. See you, UC, see you. And we'll put her on the spot. If you were a breakfast food, what breakfast food would you be and why? Bacon. Bacon. No hesitation. Why are you bacon?
Because bacon is sustainable. Eat it, it lasts you a long time, gives you good fat, good protein, and it also lasts a long time. That's how I like relationships, to be sustaining and lasting a long time. Fulfilling.
So living in Colorado Springs, does that mean you're hated by all vegans in Colorado Springs?
No.
No. They just accept you as bacon.
Well, I don't really ask. But
Every vegan, do you hate me?
no.
You missed my harassment in the first part, so. Yeah. We hope we don't have to have you every day, right? That's the balance. You missed getting used to my personality and I apologize. This will be the next 2 hours. We would dance this might be. So, I have it in my hand. I have a marker in my hand and not the clicker, just like class. So 107, that's not too bad. Yeah. So we'd like to move into the considerations. And Stacey and I have done some improving, and I think it'll be good. It'll be good. We won't need that. And so we'd like you. Oh, we didn't. Yeah. I let you talk.
Okay. All right, well, first, a teeny explanation, which is just to say, as you saw for a moment, we had carefully crafted small groups, which we've thrown out the window because a bunch of those people aren't here. One person is online. And so we are also a smaller number, which nicely means that overall, we're going to go forward and say that the group online, the three of you, you are the online group. I obviously have concluded that already, I'm sure. And then we're not such a big group here that we thought we'd make 2 groups of 3 here, but we will let you sort yourselves and we'll probably resort more than once. And we also can pretty easily, you can even be a group of 6 without too much trouble. So that's nice, actually. So Sherry and I kind of rethought this because as you'll see, there are these beautiful, really constructed small group slides that we're just kind of getting rid of and sort of moving things around. We will share all of this with you. So in case anything went by too quickly, you will have it later. And then the overall structure is we promised you, we talk a little about foundations, get to know each other. Then we're talking a little bit about sort of the process and the purpose of this whole idea of a writing equity series. So we will share a little bit from our process of setting up this idea, what might this look like, and creating a first draft of one in the field of, call it what you will, PTW, technical and professional communication, any one of those words together or separately. And then there's a hands-on application part that we really want you to, I hope, contribute to, but also think about colleagues and others who do this work with you at your home institutions and your departments, among your faculty, so that this is a seed that grows and begins to help build a community of people who are interested in the idea of contributing to writing equity briefs, white papers in a disciplinary area. And that can be your own disciplinary area, or that could be a broad disciplinary area in which you work with colleagues and have some amount of expertise, but you perhaps are, for some of you, for example, you might be the writing expert with a group of others who are disciplinary experts, or you might be the disciplinary expert and bring in a writing person to bounce things off and talk with if that's helpful. So that's sort of what we are looking for, because we want this to be a really collaborative process, but also the 2 of us could never know enough to make these work and have them be relevant to disciplinary faculties in different fields. So yeah, I just started to say just a little bit of that. Do we want to leave that up? Do we speak to it? What do you think? Yeah. And we're going to use that first question. Yeah, right? Okay. Do you want to skip our process and go back to it? Yeah. Okay. I mean, I just made a promise to this group of people, but they're a flexible group. So, okay. So I'm going to hand this back to Sherry because it is only fair as the editor and as the originator of the idea, in which I just shamelessly asked that I could be a part of. That's important. That's exactly what happened. Sherry had the idea for this, and then we have collaboratively sort of made things come together. But let's start it.
So Stacey's been a really great collaborator, but like is my time as both a really ineffective committee chair and then joining the executive committee for AWAC. We were really sort of thinking about, as the previous slide said, with our 4 reasons, like what else can we do? How can we make this actionable? And so we did a long, I would say like maybe 2 or 3 years, although I think we've met in person the 2nd time this morning. And so it's this really interesting online, like side conversations and back channeling through AWAC committee meetings to work and build a relationship. And so our process for these, I have to remember the camera, our process for these is founded on building a relationship. So having to learn about teaching practices and approaches and to be reflective of that with each other, especially at 2 different stages of our career, in 2 different bodies at 2 different institutions, at 2 different orientations, 2 equity work, and then reading scholarship, which to be honest, again, like one of my biases, I'm not a big fan of equity related scholarship because I think it has to flatten so much in order to say anything. And then it's not really honest. It doesn't really like always capture the failure and the messiness of doing this work. But we spent some time reading scholarship in order to almost do that reverse engineering. This is what we believe and this is what we do and this is what we think. How do we find a source to support that? Which again, like thinking about my students, they do the same thing. They're like, I love medical marijuana and here's really bad sources that support that. But thinking about like, how do we understand the discipline and what is the discipline saying? So it's not just our thoughts and opinion on this kind of equity disciplinary writing work, but what's supported, what's out there, what can others read to help their orientation, their understanding and their approaches and practices. And then really thinking about currency as relevancy, something we really want to emphasize is that this feels like a moving target. One thing that we've talked about is that the white papers that you can produce or any sort of professional development document you can produce will need to be updated regularly because things are always changing. The scholarship changes, someone's opinion on something changes, our students change, our faculty changes, our universities change. And so they're really thinking about keeping it current, right? Having that version 1, version 35 of it so that you can continue to go back and reflect and improve. And we've gotten into, I'd say argue here, and then I had to cross that out and cheekily left it, but really thinking about having a good natured and good humored and good spirited debate about what does something like this look like. And so one thing that we really want to emphasize in thinking about this kind of writing and this kind of sort of professional development resource or faculty and student resource is that it's best done collaboratively so that you are not the only voice saying, well, this is how we write in biology, or this is how we need to consider it in my university's version of professional writing. And so then thinking about that peer review process as good people do and having to share it with others. And so we are sharing our relationship with you today and encouraging you to build relationship and to reflect on your relationships, asking you to read scholarship, although not in the time span we have today, and then thinking about what would it mean to draft a white paper and then to share it with others in that peer review process, but then others, colleagues, other peers who can add to and sort of make it grow. It worked this time. Sorry, I'm very excited about the clicker. We're all out of order. Because I thought I fixed it and I broke it. Yeah, please. No, it's okay. Yeah, do you want us to find white paper? Yeah. Yeah. Yep. No, that's okay. Okay. Yeah. So that's a good question. We're going to take you to our documents to help answer that question because sometimes a sample is the best way to get through it. And by white papers, settling on that word was, a challenge. White papers, gray literature, research brief, right? It's a very brief document. It's a technical genre, but it fits across many, many disciplines. You'll see white papers in medicine and sciences, right? Yeah, so we're taking the same approach of these brief research-filled documents that will be supplied for AWAC members and for practitioners of WAC and writing across the curriculum, for WAC directors, leading faculty workshops. So we'd love to talk about that some more, but we'd like your raw opinion of what we've developed so far. But it is a brief, and so our goal for the white papers is 3 to 4 pages, so brief, research-based writing. Yeah,
something? So one thing about the process, like our process part is, we'll show you in a minute, but I'll just sort of speak to it, is we did a lot of reverse engineering, right? So backing into what would people need to see in order to create one of these, right? Or if you wanted to drag a colleague in and say, work on this with me. And so that's why there's a bunch. So, and this is really Sherry's genius as a current technical writer and PTW teacher, is we've got a template, we've got a heuristic, which was something that I love heuristics. So I added some questions and then we went back and forth. And the heuristic, we have a paper copy for you, has generative questions to think about. And then we have a very drafty draft first version of one in the field of professional technical writing. So that process, actually, that reverse engineering of what we need to create in order to have this work, is part of what we did together. And which, what do you want to walk through from there? Each of these things, I think if you stop us when you need to, as we go through those examples, that will probably be the best way to just simplify what we're envisioning. I'll say also, just while Sherry's getting back to our side, that I looked at white papers in many different disciplines, and there are no shared rules. I mean, is anybody surprised? Right? I mean, in policy, they're 30 pages long. You know, they're in engineering, they're sometimes 4 pages and very tight. So we have to write our own rules to some degree, because white paper will mean different things that colleagues we might speak to.
And one thing we really wanted to emphasize is we want people to actually read these things. And so at what point do people stop reading? And I think for a busy faculty member in a professional development, or sort of looking for a hot tip resource as they plan their syllabus the Friday before classes start, 4 or 5 pages sort of maxed out for us in that consideration, especially with the kind of content. And what you'll see in the samples is it's oftentimes leading people elsewhere, right? Go read this other thing too. Go look at our like hot point sort of summative work that we're providing for you, and then go over there and continue that work too. They're starting points, not ending point documents. And so the first thing we'd like you to look at is our template. And so it's in the bit.ly, the link is in the chat. And we've designed it, again, as Stacey said, sort of like, what's the bare bones information? And this template is something I might give my students, or you might give your students, where it's just like, just plug in the information here. So you'll see that as very skinny information, right? Just sort of like, when you have your information, drop it in there. And so what we'd like you to do is to, for this one, it's a digital file, so you can make a copy of it if you like, so that you're not commenting among everyone, or you can do it directly into the file itself if you'd like to see those running comments. And then also our heuristic. And so our heuristic is more, right? Our heuristic is, like many other heuristics, what we might give our students, so many windows, what we might give our students, sorry, y'all. So this one has more prompted information, right? And so this prompted information is, put your summary here, but also like, here's what your keywords should be doing, right? And here's how to determine what your keywords are. And so then looking at those back and forth. And so what would be ideal is to have your feedback on these. And our hope in part 3, our goal in part 3, is that you actually start doing the brain work and the homework to start developing these for yourselves, and to help start thinking about what it would mean to have yourself and your faculty develop these as well. Any questions from the chat about either of these 2 documents? Yeah. It's bit.ly/weheuristic. Yep. No, it's just weheuristic. We for writing equity. And I also wanted to play on the idea of we, like, we are doing this work together. This is something that we, as a collective field of writing practitioners across the curriculum, have for equity. Any questions from the chat? Do you understand? I feel like things got scattered after the break, emotionally for me.
Well, when we move some things around, what we have. Yeah. Yeah, I think
I'm happy to just bring my laptop over to you.
Yeah, and I have mine as well. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, so if you're in the room, you would have a paper copy of the heuristic. You want me to do this? That's the heuristic. Okay. And so like the template, right, is just asking like what to do in that space. Right, so the template's gonna say like, after you do the heuristic, drop it as a series of paragraphs, numbered or bulleted list, and citations if necessary. So sort of two different, yeah, so one's more inventional, generative, and then the other one is, once you've done that, work through the heuristic, drop and play. Yeah, so this is almost like our editor's template, right? Sort of like the goal of where that information, what that information would then look like. Ideally, authors would be given both, right? So like, here's the heuristic, do your invention work, have those conversations, do that research, and then when you submit it for us to work with you to get it to publishing, get it out in the world, and for you even to share with your faculty, we're putting it into our template. And then it's getting back to you and back into the AWAC population. I was a smelly squirrel earlier. No. Oh, perfect. Y'all are on the inline, the template. That's really great. So you can oscillate between the template and the heuristic as necessary. We don't have a firm time for this, but 10 minutes should be enough. Yeah, so both documents are set to comments, so you can include suggestions, you can include line by comments. Yeah, I think that's. So Rosemary, you're gonna go to, let me help you. Do you want to go to, do you want to do holistic here and digitally? So this is 52. So see the template, this is one. This would be two. Oh. And then that third link is going to be to a sample one professional. Thank you. Any and all feedback is welcome, even if it's terrible and you're like, why the hell are you doing this? Right. Right.
Because in the school, you do a lot of little research, healing functions, depending on the category.
Yeah.
Say you do exit analytical chemistry. That is a huge area. I'm going to do the instrumentation.
Mhm.
I'm going to do in instrumentation, I'll be looking at spectroscopy. In spectroscopy, it's such a huge city. And so that is what in the literary work is called the white paper. So for us, we call it a review.
Yeah, and we recognize that the name white paper could be a hang up for genre, but our goal is it's a brief review of information and literature.
Exactly.
And so it doesn't necessarily have to be white paper. It could be review. It could be research brief. It could be gray literature, which is an older term for sort of gray lit. But
I think probably it depends on the audience.
yeah, so we want
The
to,
audience is then one thing. But if the audience for the writing is a chemist, then it has to. And if it is the bridge between chemistry and the chemist and teaching, anything teaching, pedagogy, then we can say, oh, something like that.
Well,
But if it is purely
yeah.
chemistry at all,
well, one thing we wanted to consider, Rosemary, is that we're writers and teachers of writing, and that language, as we know as WAC people, is not easily universalized, right? Like it's sort of like you have to do that cross-disciplinary conversation, particularly with genre, particularly with terms when it comes to writing. The idea of like bringing rhetoric into chemistry, right? And so one of our big goals is as both AWAC and as folks sort of leading this charge to deliver information across the curriculum is to provide some common language in which we can all talk about it, so that if someone comes across a review of writing equity, that it also works in that with classroom, right? Or that writing enhanced classroom that happens to be an English department designed for STEM majors. And so we wanted something that didn't have a lot of baggage to it, so that it could be thrown at a variety of faculty and a variety of disciplines. But knowing too, if you've made one locally for your faculty and you know on your campus, there's no way in hell they're gonna be okay with this thing being called a white paper. I've got to call it a review. Then we want to allow not the one for AWAC, but if you decide to adapt it for your local needs, hey, like we can totally be like, yeah, it's a review. Y'all good with that? You know, and so sort of thinking about some of the flexibility that's possible for thinking locally about them. And for Rosemary, I totally expect you to write us one on chemistry, and we're going to throw it on that AWAC website, and all the folks who are thinking about equitable writing practices in chemistry are going to be like, all right, Rosemary's got to figure it out, and I'm going to read her paper, and I'm going to talk to my colleagues in a stand department meeting about it, and we're going to make some change. Right? And so it's a little bit of column A.
This is exactly what we're looking for. And this is what we need. It's like your perspective on this word means this thing that's going to trigger a bunch of other assumptions. Okay, how do we want to address it? Do we want to address that? Should the introduction say something like, this is not a traditional chemistry writing book? I mean, that's one way to attack, right? And actually, I was looking at our new list and the word white paper appears one time. Yeah. It's not like a key term for the whole enterprise. So, but this is what we need to kind of learn from you all, and for you all to share with us and each other, right? Is, you know, how might we interpret it in different fields, in different areas?
This workshop that I signed up, this is for very first. The way it's played, it does seem to be people administrator. But hey, it doesn't. I can go learn and then come tell my administrators this is what is going on. You know, that's how I saw it. That is what the irony.
It is, yeah, and so it's something we've talked about a lot in that relationship building and in that sort of like conversation we've had over the last year or so is the idea that we want it to be for both, right? We want faculty in the disciplines to jump into this thing and feel okay and not intimidated. We want admin to be like, oh, this is a great starting point for this workshop.
What is the copyright PC licensing on these documents? I'm imagining that some of the language in the PTW example could be used in other businesses.
We have, it's not on there, right, the Creative Commons. We have to talk about at what level, because there's so many more flavors. But it will be one of those share and share, like, with certain, like, non-commercial, like, that. The language one, though, I mean, that's a question kind of like yours, right? So some of the terminology in this draft, we haven't quite moved to the draft yet. I don't know. Yeah, it's a bit. We're kind of getting there.
I think what's interesting too about that question is, you know, one thing that we put on it is the AWAC logo, which belongs to AWAC. Bought, signed, paid for, and debated about for years. And it was a really good process. Anne survived it, Stacey survived it. And so that AWAC logo for these must remain. The colors are within the approved, voted upon, debated upon color scheme for AWAC. Now that is flexible if you're thinking about doing one of these locally, and we'd love to support you in that with maybe 2 logos, right? Your university or your writing program and the AWAC one, but it is us. It is founded and supported and sponsored by and edited through AWAC. And we really want to both spread the good work that AWAC is doing and will continue to do, but also make sure that yeah, we're a part of it, we're proud of it, and we want to hold on to that. Yeah, please.
Writing program that we do. We put it on our website. It's not over logo, I'm trying to just thinking about, so if you put the logo on it, in some way it becomes property of that institution. Like I'm thinking about ways to make it accessible, but like what would be the downfalls of having it? You know, I guess I'm just thinking about the copyright
Did
thing
you think
too.
of a downfall?
No,
Yeah.
that's why we just threw it up there.
So
but now
no,
I'm
a
like, now
downfall.
I'm
Oh
wondering,
no, people know about AWAC. Oh no.
people read about our program. Like,
Oh no, people might click on the website and figure out that we're doing really awesome work and cool workshops. Oh no, how awful.
yeah, that's what I think
Yeah.
too. Okay, I was just
But
like,
so I mean, I think about like, I think about, right, I come from business and I come from business writing, and I really think about, would you ever see anything from Ben & Jerry's without a Ben & Jerry's logo on it? No, you would not. But we deliver professional development documents in our programs, in our classes. Every single thing I create for my students in my classroom has my name all over it, has that class number all over it. It is mine, my intellectual labor, but also, hey, if you find this thing on Course Hero, you better reach out and know who it is. And so really thinking about like us wanting to, yes, it's an AWAC writing equity series, and we're proud of that. We want to spread that with an asterisk of, we really want to support this work in every discipline and every university and every WAC and writing program, first year writing program. So how can we help you do that? We really do imagine this as way more collaborative than a journal article, right? Yeah. What's up, Leslie? It's just fine, please. This is what we're here for.
So again, this is coming from someone who I'm not familiar with white papers. I mean, yeah, no, I mean, I'm definitely familiar with literature reviews, but I'm hung up on the pedagogical and the assessment considerations. I was wondering, is that part of the final, is that visible, or is this considerations for the review of the white paper?
Those are categories.
Yeah, no, I know it's required, but what I'm envisioning. Okay, so it is, so you see it as part of in the white paper. Okay.
So for us, the idea of equity is not about
Right.
And so, and the idea of writing.
Okay.
And so we really struggled with the idea that you could somehow talk about where the conversation with equity is in regards to writing in a discipline, and not talk about
Okay, that makes sense.
So
All right.
we really wanted to keep the more most developers, the more we're like, oh, these things are not separate, right? So we can talk
Yeah.
about, language diversity and biology,
Right. Yeah.
right? Wow. But that is a particular class.
Mhm.
That's not that one bio 101 like
Right.
style, right? Particular class, and that's a particular structure. And some rooms that is structure have to be in the classroom in order to bring that to work.
Okay.
And so that's why all this happen.
Okay.
Use this stuff to get a conversation about what we're talking about
Mhm.
when it comes to teaching, writing, reading, classroom, but also if you're the teacher, you can think of a question, what are some internal interrogations? And you'll see that we need to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And because, you know, in writing these are for authorship, and sometimes it's that idea of like, well, what did you do? Right? Like, you would be writing the thing unless you got your doing. Probably wanted to do that. And so that was that's
Yeah, I guess what I'm trying, I'm still trying to wrap my mind around is like, just for in terms of coherence, because like I see new developments, but I'm just trying to figure out how do these work? Are we, because the other thing, what I associate white paper with is like some sort of policy statement or something. And so, but I don't necessarily see a policy statement. So, you know, so like a policy statement would make sense for like, here are the pedagogical considerations, here are the assessment considerations for this policy that we would suggest. But I don't see that. All I see are new developments, as in this is like literature review. Does that make sense?
And that category is essentially literature review. So if you wanted to go to the third one, which is a third box.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Of us trying to do one of these.
Okay, that
you will
makes-
see that new developments does
Okay.
function as almost a literature review because we're sort of very poorly, very briefly, and like dissatisfactorily, like trying to run through some of that. Yeah, no, but please do, please do. No, it's okay. I was just.
That we would like your feedback and co-authorship of some of the like questions and the sections, right? In the sense of, so this exemplifies, but is a very early draft, because what if we as a group, like if you give some really great feedback on one section, then
We have to
it will
overhaul
become
it.
very different. Yeah, basically, yeah.
It's a shitty first draft. You know,
That's
and
right,
Lamont, like
and
we're
then-
throwing
and
something
Lamont,
down.
that's
Yeah.
right, exactly.
Tracy, thank you for that comment. The second one should have been technical communication, not composition. So you caught a typo, a very common one for me at least. So it should say technical professional communication, not composition, and that keyword that you provided on the draft. So thank you, Steve. Thank you, Tracy. You caught a glaring typo. I didn't even notice
Good
it.
composition of my words.
And I use
so
composition way more than
yeah.
communication.
And then I wanted to just.
I did kind of wonder what technical composition was. I was like, I don't think I've ever heard it used that way, but
Yeah, my students write papers and first year writing. So for me, that works in my brain, but it's not a thing. I should make it one. But Joan, you.
If Joan is there, yeah, Joan made a great comment about transdisciplinary writing and kind of about language. And I was wondering maybe, Joan, if you're there to unmute,
Yeah, sure.
maybe just speak to that so that these guys in the room
Right.
who are struggling with these documents could see that.
Well, this is I'm sorry. Okay, can you guys hear me, by the way? Yeah, okay. I have been involving with creating this like a linguistic diversity position statement in my program, in the writing program administration, and also I'm involved with writing a course curriculum in my institution. So I've been watching how that kind of statement kind of has come into places the way they are now for the past 3 years. And then during those 3 years, I've noticed that other programs like education department or DII office in my institution, they have their own efforts try to kind of make progresses in this area, but there has been relatively lack of conversation among those parties and programs. So I've kind of felt that if there has been some more conversation and environment among those programs or departments, probably we could have created a more like a cohesive message across the institution, and then that it's going to be a lot more helpful for like those like instructors to envision or imagine what they can do in their classrooms or coursework when they design their curriculums or when they design instructional like activities. That's what I was trying to say in the comment. So that's what I meant by more like a transdisciplinary effort. I'm not sure whether that answers your question.
I just read that, just added a gloss on a gloss. So
Yeah.
that's more, which is good.
I think what I'm already learning today is these could be so much longer. And even like you'll see in the sample, because of the formatting that I chose, which maybe only should be a first page and then subsequent pages get smaller margins, because it's sort of limiting the amount of writing that can actually go into the length of these things, is that it'll be hard to in some ways cover all of it, right? And so to think about transdisciplinary efforts, oh man, like we had talked briefly about like not requiring but suggesting a cross-disciplinary writing of these documents, right? So you have a biologist and someone in writing studies coming together to provide the kind of guidance in a document like this. Like what would that look like? Or you have a professional technical writer and a literature scholar. I don't think they ever talk in my department, but it would be a really interesting, I think, balance to think about not just transdisciplinarity, but how we aren't putting these conversations together and could do so more forcefully, at least in our own local environments.
Yeah. And one thing that is maybe less visible right now is that there will be a kind of editorial structure in the long run, right? So that at this very early stage, it's about getting your feedback, getting people who want to be involved, having room to speak to their colleagues as well, and getting sort of people together. But ultimately, there will be a structure that is right now Sherry and I, and probably some committee on AWAC, right, that will say all of these have certain things in common, right, and they'll be so that they can be made public, and so that there's some commonality around them. And I think that will, and Joan, I promise this is eventually becoming relevant to your glosses, which is I think that will also provide a way of learning across what's coming together. So if we're seeing that people are using the same terms in every document, well then, because we talked about, well, maybe we should make sure that some of the keywords are the same every time, for example. And if we're seeing that people are citing from the same scholarship but making completely contrary claims, that's an editorial thing to it. Does that make sense? And I think, Joni, you're ahead of us, but you're right. You're right. Like these are the things that will come out. And so at that clearinghouse stage, when we're looking at next to final drafts, right? That's the time I think we interconnect people and provide some feedback or suggestions about how some are being developed. And I imagine this working maybe in disciplinary ways, right? Like the biologist should read the chemist and the chemist should read the biologist.
Yeah,
for example.
college, right? So then one thing that I've been pushing for is not just what we do in a writing program, but what we do in the department, what we do then in our college, and what our college is doing in relationship to other colleges, because this work doesn't really leave, sorry, one of my biases, the work so rarely leaves writing studies in meaningful ways, right? And we rarely get the good work that's happening outside of writing studies into writing studies, which is why I love IWAC and AWAC. And so thinking about these kinds of documents as communication and relationship building documents, whether that's relationship building documents within folks who are teaching writing, right, at your institution or within across our multi-discipline field, but also like thinking about relationships of authors of these things to the organization, to us as editors who are trying to facilitate and spread this information as well. One thing I'll also say is that we really think that the heuristic itself, it's just good conversation starters for folks who are diving into this work and who are maybe thinking about something like a syllabus revision, right? Or an assignment revision, right? So could you take, I just got my second year review, which is like a third year review, but earlier, so they can really tell you should have your book done. But to really think about like those pedagogical choices, and are some of our questions here going to have people be reflective and make micro changes if they can't really have the power or even the time and the energy to make those larger macro changes in their entire writing class, entire writing program, entire WAC program in university, right? And so we think that the heuristic can even be like a great starting point for conversations among faculty and among WAC administrators and their faculty to think about these larger questions of equity. We are going to push to 2 and then take our break because we haven't even got you guys out of your seats and into Whitepapers and doing all Whitepapers, the whiteboard function in this weird app we've been using for 3 years. So weird. It was like a nowhere app and now it's a multi-billion-dollar nonsensical thing. And so what we'd like you to do, yes, I hate them. So what we'd like you to do is to take a little bit of time in the vein of like conversation starters, and what this white paper can do is we'd like all of you all to go to white paper, and for you all online to open a whiteboard, which we're going to get done here soon for you. No. As the Zoom host, I'm sorry. And what we'd like you to do I don't know how any of this works now. Are you close over there? We did test this out. Do any of you smart online people know how to get the whiteboard back up? So stop sharing. Good. Oh, look at that. Look at all these smart people. Good whiteboard. Ta-da! Yeah, we have to launch one. Perfect. So you online people should have access to the whiteboard. Yeah? Maybe? Do you see that thing? Oh, you're in there. I can see you. Yay. So we'd like you to consider the question of how we, like a group of people, define equity. So take some time and work in the whiteboard. How should we, or how would you, how should all of us define equity? And then I have a second one, but you can start with that. This is exactly what they are. Okay. I'm not sure. I feel like that's why our W. Yeah. So the first thing that we did is have a definition for equity. The second thing. Yes, thank you for that, Jess, or whomever put the sticky note in this. The second thing we'd like to do is, what would you and your discipline locally or disciplinarily need to do to these kinds of documents? So one for equity and one for other things. I'm gonna write it. Yeah, I do that. I want that. I wasn't sure. I put them up and I was like, I can't use that.
Needed.
Yeah, yeah.
We need white.
No, no,
White papers to work.
this
as in,
kind
like,
of
to-
document.
Like to use these documents? Is that right? Okay.
Yeah. Like if you had to, if you could take something like this to your.
Yeah.
Or
Or you might-
to your field.
or to mine, yes.
What would you be? So folks online, as you keep working on that one, Jess is gonna put a sticky note in for us. The second question is, what would your discipline or your campus need to change about these documents or these types of documents for them to work? Uh-huh. Or even like these types of documents.
In the hallway, after class, before class, on the phone.
Well, we don't need to go 2 hours. I wonder if Joan and Tino could bring their answers together. So, one thing, oh, Tracy, I'm so sorry, honey. One thing that I'm seeing between Joan and Tino, and so maybe you could do a post-it, so something that like shows us you trying to bring these two together. And so I'd like you to try to engage with some synchronous typed dialogue together, to where we could see equity in the classroom, inclusive actions, and providing a safe environment. Like, what would be your shared definition, as we're sort of forcing folks in the room to do? And then the same for number 2. We're only do this for just a tiny bit longer, and then we'll do another mini break and have you do some writing on your own as well. It's really interesting. And my former institute so now it's just I don't know on the committee, so I was like, oh. But it was a 3-year long process. Here was like this little discussion and Dr. Evans out there in the world, right? And so it's fascinating. I love because I don't really talk to them, so I really see that for me. So I hope that's what are they even doing? No, I think so. This is what we needed, right? Like talking, and that's class 2. Okay, how's that in for a bit? And then here's the narrative. Mentors and so much for me in their work. Well, even again, I'm thinking about, like thinking about and fun doing this great service and so like, and Mike was like, who are they? Like they are DPS that we are. Like Al did nothing because it was a but he did know that. Great. They keep it that way and you associate it. But and so like what does it mean? What does it mean? They don't have their really great work, knowing that like I don't want to you don't want to ask the committee what they're doing at all. Right? I'd rather like think about other things. But then when I saw why the second member at large that's the new one. There's happening. She's an Indian woman. She's on a bunch of committees already. Yes. 30. Joining, like they're already present, like they're already active, right? That's why I'm like, wait, that's why I had that question. So this is really interesting. Like, I think part of, and I talked to Doug about this a little bit, I think we have to return to diversity, equity, inclusion, and outreach. Yeah. Right, and like that. I think it's so sad, like, I can see it as Black woman. The young kids are doing press on nails, and I was like, oh, I'm young, I'll do it, and then I got really aggressive in here, and I was just like, what? But it hurts me. I kept getting gel, because like, not only is it cancer from gel, but my fingers were falling apart. Like they were so sensitive, they could not do the light treatment. I just couldn't do it anymore. And I was like, so then I did the SMS. I like the different, but you have, what is it? What? What's your name? I've never done it. Well, I feel like acrylic is once you go there, you can't go back. Like my sister has acrylic, she's never like, wow, it's not. And it's good. Oh. Here somewhere. You know what I started doing? Sally Hansen has a minute polish because because I just don't have the time to be like, okay. So I actually do it at my desk. No, it's not that Sally, and it's done really quickly. And when I need a touch up, I'm like, so this was an experiment. I have a wedding on Saturday in Annapolis. So yeah, and I cut them and shaped them, and so they felt really good. And then one of them they like, I was like, I got this in there. I was on your phone. Like, sometimes. Especially women with these pockets. Tino and Joan, I'm glad you guys have started having a dialogue as I demanded. Thank you. We are going to bring everybody back together and have them do a little bit of reporting out. So would you and Tino do the first reporting out, Joan? Are you camera ready, Tino? Is that okay? Awesome. Good to see your face. Okay, teachers and writers and humans. Teachers and writers and humans and conversers. I'll do it. Can we do it? It's mouth closed and ears open. Yeah. If you were an ed major at any point, you probably have that at several back pockets. So we're gonna have Tino and Joan. I almost said Juan. That would be interesting. Report out for us, and so I'm going to make them bigger because I know how to do this. This one? Nope. I think that's okay. Yeah. We'll just stop this real quick. So will you two walk us through some of your thoughts and sort of what you came up with here?
Okay, sure. Tina, do you want to go start? Do you want to go first or whichever way?
Please, Joan, go right ahead. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, I'll do this. So first, a question was, how do we define equity? I guess that's pretty much Tino and I looks like, even though we exchange ideas through writing and text, but looks like we are pretty much on the same page for these two questions. But for let me start with the first one. So we define equity is where students can be themselves, regardless of their culture, ethnic, or racial or linguistic backgrounds. They should feel comfortable with who they are. So that kind of environment must be kind of, I mean, it eventually that kind of environment should be achieved through everybody's effort, but I guess the teachers or instructors' roles are critically important because we are the captains, right? So first, we need to make them feel safe about their language backgrounds. One of the things I'm trying to do in my classrooms is that I try to create a lot of meaningful writing projects so that they can choose their own writing topics. So those writing topics that are relevant to their common interest. So let's say some Latino students, they choose some of the labor issues among her Spanish-speaking or Latino communities for her writing projects. So giving them the freedom to choose the topics, but sometimes I go a little bit farther than that, and then I kind of let them choose the genres or the formats of their writing assignments, so that I try to incorporate more like a multimodality projects in pursuing the topics they are purely interested in. But in doing so, I encourage them to make a connection with the content knowledge or the disciplinary expert they are pursuing, or disciplinary knowledge they are engaged in that semester or in their program. So maybe Tina, you can chime in something about that, or if you have anything you want to add now.
Well, sure, just an agreement. I've taught composition now for 25 years.
Mhm.
And one way I find that allows us as a classroom community to celebrate each other's backgrounds and to promote inclusivity, as well as to build a strong foundation from the get-go of the term, is to allow students to have agency in their topic selections. And in addition to that, also discuss why those selections are being made and why they are important to us culturally, personally, experientially. And then after going through, in my case, in my discipline, the writing process, I do ask students, and they do have agency in the vehicle in which they would do so. I give them options, of course, and include assistance where needed. But to present these ideas, typically via an essay, a video essay, a PowerPoint presentation, or even a dramatic play. I've had students do that. So again, an opportunity to include cultural significance, creativity, and just to celebrate our individual identity. Thank you.
Exactly, right. And then moving on to the second question, actually, Tino and I kind of on the same page again, but we bring the faculty's voice and their ideas in the process of this kind of drafting this kind of document is really important because I guess they are primary stakeholders, right, for this white papers, and then having their voices and then the ideas is extremely important because they are the doors actually of this white paper as well. So, and then after that, as on an ongoing basis, providing some like a faculty learning community or faculty development opportunities where we can provide a certain scholarship reading and then organize some like a discussion group, like through brown bag lunches, which is something I'm doing in my program as well. And then creating some kind of small groups where some faculties can come together and share their some teaching ideas, and then some opportunities or space for them to design their current classroom activities to be more inclusive in terms of writing activities and assessment activities. Those questions Sherry and Stacy put in the draft, especially in the subsections of the pedagogical and then assessment considerations, are really great for the faculty to think through. Oh, okay. Thank you for doing that. Yeah. So actually putting some efforts for like a faculty development can be one area we can think about for this kind of document to be effective. Tino,
Yeah,
what do you think? Yeah.
I love the idea of the brown bag lunches. Thank you.
Yeah.
In addition to teaching composition at
Mhm.
community college where I teach, I'm also the WAC director at our campus. And one thing that I've intentionally attempted to do for each of our annual cohorts in the WAC program is to try and get a real diverse mix of disciplines, programs, and prefixes. And just through that kind of grassroots work every year, just sharing the message and really emphasizing that disciplinary expertise is important, in just kind of emphasizing how WAC practice, WAC pedagogy can work throughout multiple disciplines and prefixes. And you know, my word as a teacher of English, of course, is strong, but not as strong as someone from the discipline who can meet with their colleagues after their WAC experience and really share in that wealth, or that's the dream anyway. Thank you.
Thank you for my online pair who has just knocked it out. We did lose Tracy, who's having some health issues. Thank you. We are going to jump into purple. Okay, so we'll jump into team purple, composition, writing, English ed, sort of like a nice transition. So I'm gonna bring the mic, and if you'll talk us through a little bit of what you put together for defining the term, and then what kind of changes are needed. It's tough to see, it's way back here. It's like right here. So you'll put on your magnifying glasses and make your screen really big. No, it's not, nothing's gonna help. I'm sorry.
This is a lot of trust you put in me. Chime in as necessary. Oh, I see you fist bumping over there because you gave it to me. We had a really, really great discussion that started from our shared soapboxes of this idea of research writing being really reductive across campus, and my continued battles with the nursing department, but that's for another conversation. And so when we thought about equity, we were actually thinking a lot about equity in the ways that we support student writers and the ways that we sort of structure our processes. So less about maybe what we're seeing in the writing and more maybe about how we're supporting students throughout the writing process. Is that fair of what we're saying? Okay. So we imagine an audience of the non-AWAC folks in our English departments and our English ed and education departments. And thinking really specifically about these longtime instructors and recognizing that they think they're doing the best for their students, like they really have this dedication to doing good work for their students, but perhaps it's not work. Their ways of support are not the ways that we know more recent research has said is, to support students like veterans or students who maybe need a little bit more support as they're coming to the college or university. So that's a lot of words to say. Our definition of equity was a lot about connection and thinking a lot about giving students the time and labor necessary, recognizing that faculty have barriers to that. So we were thinking a lot about like getting at our audience rhetorically and valuing the barriers that come to this time and labor, but also maybe giving faculty ideas of like, the labor can be on the back end of the lesson. It maybe is more effective. One of my colleagues said after the lesson, it's this idea of giving everyone what they need for writing instruction doesn't mean watering it down. I think sometimes that's sort of a challenge that we all face. And instead that it sometimes means I wrote this, it sometimes means it's a little kick in the ass to get them moving forward. And sometimes it means they need help, and sometimes they maybe need it said differently. So we're thinking a lot about that and about how equity is about connection, flexibility,
I love what you all said about the topic of student interest and relevance in student topics, and I thought this was really valuable. So we were talking a little bit about like some of our faculty have made students think that maybe they're not great writers because they don't know how to use APA citations. And like in the death of that, so one way that we've gotten over it is teaching students to use university-sponsored existing resources. And that seems like a real equity practice. Like it's already there, teach them how to use it, which is what you said, and then say, okay, I'm not gonna worry about citations, it already does it for you. And so maybe if we can reach this audience thinking about this approach question around the frame of research, respecting what they already know as experts in their field, but also giving them some ideas to get past those barriers. I think we're thinking a lot real practically about those pedagogical questions. That's a lot of words. What would you add? What did we miss?
One of the things we also talked about too, especially for students who may need a little extra support, is that sometimes that extra support does not come in the classroom. Sometimes it comes outside of normal class time and normal class activities and normal class assignments. So maybe just a sit down for 15 or 20 minutes with the student to give them a different type of explanation, to allow them to look at an assignment and flex it toward their needs or well, if this doesn't work, could you try doing it this way, and giving them suggestions on how to approach different topics they might be less familiar with. And then I really like the idea of engaging complexity and depth over breadth, which are the ideas that I think were some of the last things that we started talking about. Really playing on what they already know and teaching them to, instead of writing first and then trying to plug the research in afterwards, researching first and then writing about what they researched and what they learned from what the research told.
One of the things I find most challenging about writing right now is expressing to students how much time writing gives. And if you have a 10-week term or a 16-week semester, that's not enough to write a good paper. That's not how we as writers write papers. You don't sit down, and some of us maybe sit down for 8 weeks and bust out a great article, and it's ready and it's done and it's published and it's beautiful and everybody loves it. And so how do we give them the skills and the training and the understanding that it takes real time to read enough to then write something? So our research paper, sustained research project, is half of the semester, and the first like 3/4 or the first 5 weeks, they're reading, they're researching. So they really need a significant amount of time before they can say anything, expecting that they won't say much at all. And so really trying to get them to understand that. So shifting just slightly, thank you, into our STEM-minded folks, biologists, science communicator, and a chemist. What did you all talk about? Who's going to be your speaker? Okay, thanks, Rosemary.
Okay, so here, we put ours together this way. And first of all, we had two headings. One was, how do we define equity? And the other one was right here, discipline campus changes needed for these WAC to work. First, how do we define equity? We saw it by, you see equity by looking at assumptions. Remember, we are in the sciences, assumptions and methodologies, conditions that allow for equity and access to information, knowledge, and understanding for all. Okay. Scientific information and literacy. Okay. All those are the things, the components that make up equity. Access to information, experimentation, we are experimentalists, Not only experimentation, you would be looking at resources, Mentors, they really need mentors, okay? Can make or break you, okay? And those mentors will act as role models. So very, very important. And all this would help in shaping. They are coming to us. Whatever biases they had, they are being shaped by looking at all these factors. And hopefully the idea is it would be shaping it for the better, for the more complete, holistic person that would come out at the end of their 4 years of college or 2 years of community college. Hopefully they'll be going on to another 2 years to get a college degree. So these are the components we include when we talk about equity, okay? Now, the second portion of it that we handled was discipline, campus changes that we will need to be able to effect, cooperate, and put together this white paper. Okay. What are the factors that we will need? Considerations first, so that it is not very narrow. It has to be interdisciplinary, as was reflected in our committee, our group. Okay. We had one person that tied all of us together. Okay. That's the science literacy person. Then there was the biologist and there was the chemist. So right there, interdisciplinary. Then the importance, here are the considering importance of collaboration within those disciplines, collaborations. And we are not going to look at, it wouldn't be tunnel vision, in which case tunnel vision, just biology or just chemistry. No, interdisciplinary, which means it will be inclusive because we are going to use the person from, definitely, in my own case, we'll be using a director for the writing center. In fact, without that director, I wouldn't be here. In fact, without that director, never knew there was a forum like this. I never knew. So it is working on my campus, California North State University College of Health Sciences. We are just focused on students who want to be in the healthcare profession, medical doctors, dentists, pharmacists. Those are the people that come to us. So our clientele is very homogeneous. Okay. Now, and this, they would feel inclusive without being threatened in their own discipline. She's not, she's a biologist, I'm a chemist, we can work together, okay? Now, they have to be comfortable in being uncomfortable. Hey, as I'll be giving my presentation tomorrow, I hope you all will be able to come. You would definitely, for real, you will see inter-collaboration. Me there as a chemist, there will be a biologist, that our director will be joining us remotely. Her name is Jill Dorman. Hey, Jill, she's the one that made this happen. Never knew this was ever existed. Now, we also have somebody in service learning on our campus, and we have somebody in immunology. So our biology person that will be talking with me on a different thing is a geneticist. So you clearly on our campus can see inter-collaboration. Please, all of you, including those that are online, make sure you chime in for our session tomorrow, for real. Okay, so comfortable without being threatened, tolerant for other disciplines, okay? Commitment from the campus. Our administrator, our dean is here with us. So right there, yes, that's why I say it's an interest you really have to come see. Our dean is here. He's the geneticist, so he wears two hats. He's the geneticist and he's our dean. Administration is here, okay? The campus communities, that is the admin, the faculty, and the staff. Don't forget the staff. They are a good key component for the success of the campus. Thank you so much. That was what we discussed. It's wonderful.
All day, Rosemary. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Cool. I love it. We have a very short amount of time, which is great because I feel like we finally figured out how this thing is working and now it's ending. Like any good party, it gets good at the end. And so what I think, I mean, I don't know, I love it. We do, it's your party. I can.
That there is a moment in which we want to co-create contact with, right? So please share your own information, but also if you have colleagues that you feel comfortable sharing their information or ours with them, whatever is appropriate. I think that's important to take a few minutes to do while we're all together. And sorry, I'm gesturing this way to our online folks, but that applies to people as well. I think we talked about is the author recruitment. What are you doing?
Being weird. I'm very hangry.
It's, author recruitment, right? So do you have suggestions for us? Could we talk together just for a few minutes about how to bring other people into this conversation? So it's just two variations on the same theme, which is this idea of the contact list and the people who are involved in this work. And we were sort of talking a little sidebar about how I think, an ideal sort of combination or team around one of these is probably something like what Rosemary was suggesting, which is content specialist, so to speak. You may not think of yourself that way, but plus at least one kind of writing across the curriculum type of person. So someone who teaches a very intensive course in a content area, does that kind of translational work, is used to kind of work with people who use the same words to mean different things. That kind of team, I think, is really going to be ideal. So I just wanted to go in terms of that. And then Jess, as usual, by the way, can we just give it up for Jess for a moment, who we all just met today, who is a graduate student in where are you at in your trajectory? Awesome. Thank you very much. And also is endowed with the ability to read minds. I mean, because the thing that I was pointing at, this is the thing. I haven't called it anything but a thing, and she found it. So do you want, and then of course your questions. We just want to make sure we get a little time for this. Yeah, but please, do you have a suggestion for how to make that measurable platform be helpful?
For the deliberations from the three groups, 2 that are here in person and the one online, so the 3 groups, could we share this information so that we can, yeah. Oh, okay. Yes. Okay, wonderful. Yeah. Okay, perfect, perfect. Thank you.
So Christy just mentioned that the permissions aren't open, and so Sherry is working on that right this moment for this little dinosaur icon thing here. And so that will be opened momentarily. Other sort of questions, suggestions, just things that you wanted to, it's been very helpful every time you say, can I just stop you all for a moment and XYZ, that's where it's at. Yeah.
I would love to be a part of writing something in one of those departments that is a challenge on my campus, but maybe is really great work on other campuses, you know what I'm saying? So I think this could be a really great way to meet the people doing the WAC work. I'm not demonizing nursing, I'm sorry, nursing, but like in nursing across the world, the good nursing professors that are on board with this, that I could bring back to my campus. So I think that the audience that I'm imagining, like the participant list, can be two-way there. Like, here's what I would like to contribute. I have a great biochemist who would write one of these things with us. I have lots of faculty in the journalism school that would love to write some of this. But then also, like, I'm seeking out someone that would help me with these other departments. You know, like an old Craigslist sort of ad thing. Yeah, yeah.
We can, I don't think we have it now, but we can maybe also ask people to sort of indicate the role they'd like to play. So maybe that, like, a role would be, I'd love to be on a cross-disciplinary team, or I'd love to find 2 other biologists who care about XYZ like I do. Right. So yeah.
Work for us. But I think for me, it's important for you to think about, like, as an author, what could this document mean for you? What are the opportunities for you to construct something like this? And as a potential collaborator, facilitator, who could you bring in and how could you start that process for yourself, rather locally or ideally with us? Because we like you all so much. And whoever you want to con into such a thing. Oh, yeah, too. That's just fine. Yeah. So putting it in there. Yeah. So the question is, right. So you have a colleague provide their contact information and we'll do the reaching out just to verify, hey, your name was given, no commitment. And so, yeah, that would be cool. Mhm. We'd love that. Would be ideal. We would love having multiple. And I think too, what it means for us is then what would be the opportunity of bringing those multiple authors together to make one, right? Because I think that would spread that conversation and spread that relationship building. So what would it mean if I think one thing that's come up in the space is compositionists, right? People who teach first year writing. What does a document like this mean for first year writing, and how can it, in a class that most students are taking in their time at the university? And I always argue first year writing is WAC, and WAC is nothing without first year writing, because that's the start of the conversation. So like, what happens if we have 5 of those? Well, then can we take all 10 of those people or 8 of those people and say, guys, we love this so much. Thank you so much. Let's synthesize, like, let's make one. And I think that would have even more power, but also I think would allow a lot of different people, those perspectives are different, right? So how many times can you feed a mouse a slightly different amount of food and see what happens if I had a paper about it? I mean, that feels like laughing, but I feel like that's real. That's real. Like, well, now we gave it 2 crackers. And so that's a whole new area of research. And so I feel like we should just do more of that too.
I don't think we have, we haven't talked about like trying to force quotas yet, right? Like no more science papers until we get through from the social sciences, right? So I think it's kind of weird. Organic at first, and I don't, part of what you're talking about, this idea of subdivision that might naturally occur, so it's almost like, well, I want to identify inorganic chemistry, and I don't actually know what that is, right? And I think there is a difference granular and right? I mean, I think it's like how granular is this one? That's sort of our blue guidance, right? Is that not your?
Yeah, and I think for us, like even trying to make the first one in professional technical writing, we were like, oh, wow, like can be a very different conversation from composition, can be a very different conversation from other English studies sort of broadly, can be a different conversation if you mean medical writing or if you mean like science writing or technical writing or business writing, right? PTW in itself is so multidisciplinary and so subdivided. And so I think that we're optimistic that people will like this thing and that it'll be popular. And so we don't quite have an answer, but if we get real busy, we'll come up with some answers. That's what we just recruit. Like you now, Dylan, are an editor. You're welcome. Other questions or feedback, particularly from people online, or if you like can think about strategies. Do you want to do one? Do you want to find someone to do one? Do you have questions about equity and what it might mean to work through the heuristic? Just spitballing. That's okay. It's been a long morning, afternoon, see? Oh, so the dino icon is really cool. I can show you real quick. And so the dino icon is, yeah, so if you have Google, you hit the share button, create QR code. So it's only in Google Chrome, but I use it a lot for in class when I want my students to go and do stuff. I'll just drop a QR code because they can't type. They can turn on their phone. But it works for any website. So no, it's always a dinosaur when it's Google. So if I did one right now, there it is. And it always will work for that page. There are other QR code generators, but they're way less fun. I did want to say that one thing that's been really helpful for me is I will guiltily, I guess, I will say that I don't necessarily incorporate a lot of this stuff into my technical writing class. And that maybe is a big oversight. Our technical writing classes are for computer science majors for the most part now. It used to not be, but for the most part it is. And the department's been really clear about what they want and don't want in that class. And so in the butts and seats, maintaining relationships with other departments, thinking about the purpose of a service course largely fueled by students in other majors and not anywhere near the English department, we've sort of had to do some really interesting Olympics to meet them halfway. And so like, for example, the assessment stuff, not gonna work. Not going to easily work in our tech writing courses. We teach 30 a semester. It just sort of doesn't, 92% or so of our students are computer science majors. So it's not always easy to be like, oh yeah, we're doing ungrading and your effort is enough. And the department doesn't buy that. The students don't really buy that. But thinking about other ways, like we will do a lot of conversations around disability and tech writing. And so what does it mean to not only make our documents accessible, to really meet the needs of multiple users? So, and I'll add the difference of like, you just broke your leg. How'd you get in this building today? And just that question. And what are you seeing now? Right? And so, or we do instructions and we watch a video of how to make an origami bird. They'll read instructions on how to write an origami, make an origami bird. Then they'll see an instructions with no words to try to capture illiteracy. Then we'll watch a video of a man in China, pretty sure, who makes an origami bird with no hands and uses his mouth. So how do instructions change and how can we think about equity in these contexts and how to write in equitable ways to a variety of audiences? That's a little bit different than the WE series. Right, but some of the pedagogical approaches, right, some of those assessment approaches that we're sort of providing in the heuristic can be a good tool to be like, oh, maybe I can't do this really pie in the sky, lofty, like overhauling my entire course, which is one of the limitations I have at Tech right now. But I can take these questions and my own teaching and my own syllabus and my own sort of efforts towards writing and push that forward, right? And so my students also have to write instructions to someone who is not an SME, a subject matter expert, right? So they get all, I'm a computer scientist. I'm going to be a computer scientist. I was like, that's not a job. But you have a, so yeah, give it to a layperson. That layperson happens to have a 4th grade education because he went to juvenile prison and is just now being released after 25. That's not quite realistic, but the way my brain works right now. And then they struggle, right? They struggle. How do I explain something to someone who is in the target expert area, but has, I call them unusual users, this unusual user category. So they're forced to write in different ways in the same genres that they need to learn. And so, yeah, I think that for me, this is not just about doing work for me. I love, please do work for me, do work for us, do work for the org, but to complete like that conversation, that relationship of what does equity mean in writing classrooms in big ways and small ways.
You saw what she just did right there, right? You saw that? Okay. I feel like I'm just gonna go. Okay. Well, I'll say that. So we're glad that the heuristic seemed generative. And I've also heard people say already, you can use it in a lot of different contexts. And so just to build on what Sherry was saying, do that. I hope you do that. But also, we really appreciate if you would also come back around and say, you know, we had some conversations with other people in the department who weren't here, and this is what they found confusing, or this is what they got stuck with, or this is what they wanted more of. So I think would be really, really helpful. We call it beta testing, right? You know, it's sort of a little bit of that type of thing. If you, as I heard a few of you say, just feel a little bit inspired to do that anyway, right? So, you know, if you want to take a couple of these questions to, somebody said they're like, take some questions to a brown bag lunch, like, do that, absolutely. And then also if people have different kinds of like things make them excited or stuck, we would love to hear that back basically, because that's really helpful. Because part of what's difficult while doing this work, I think it's a balance we're trying to strike and we need to keep striking, is that balance that Sherry started off with between sort of what is universally helpful to people and makes sense and what is discipline specific. So that balance is absolutely impossible to get right, but we can at the very least try to entertain some of each. And I think our job is to sort of to try to continue to filter the what is useful across disciplines. And I hope that co-authors and all of you who are part of this, your job is then going to be to like, let me take this into a community, a disciplinary community, and adapt it and make it make sense for a group of faculty, fill in the blank, right? Who are people who are teaching, you know, the first lab class in biology that is large, right? Or whatever that like context is. So I think that's the like big take reciprocity I imagine in the future. And did the contact list work for everybody? It looked like it was here. And you folks online as well. Sherry is very respectful in creating these forms, and I'll just call out and give you credit to the fact that she took the time to say, you know, if you think, as my kid are wanting to know, why am I still not answering the phone? That's okay. They do that. I know that I'm doing this. In that way that we all know things without knowing things. But also that, you know, anybody you might put down on the contact list, that we're not going to like start like drafting them and pretending that they know that we've shared their name. And the next step would be, so-and-so thought you might be interested, are you? I just want to emphasize that as well, that, and that goes for all of you as well. If you kind of leave here and you're like, that was cool, but I never really want to talk to people again. Okay, I mean, that's okay too. But at the very least, I hope that you, if you have not been a member of AWAC and just now you are, like, spread that word also. I feel like I have to say this as like the past chair of the organization, right? Let your colleagues know that AWAC exists, that there's a lot of free resources for them. This will become one of them, right? This is one of the free resources we hope will be useful to people. and reach out to the membership email address that's very easy to find on the website if you'd like to know about institutional memberships, because if that makes sense for your school, it's actually not that expensive, and there's an annual fee, and you can have like a dozen people or more for sort of just all group members. So if that is relevant as well, something to think about. It may facilitate this work also, because it opens up things like workshops and web-based professional development, some of which is been by discipline and some of which has been by level, like graduate student in the first year or continuing. Yes, we're doing that for free because we have built into our membership program a donation system which pays for graduate student membership. So if you want to be a member of AWAC, then then just reach out and we're happy to accommodate you. And if not, I've got extra funds for any graduate student who wants to join me on this mad dash. Oh, that's true. That's if we're frank, it can be our organizations across disciplines can be very white spaces. We welcome cross-disciplinary people, but people of color always welcome, queer people. This question is something that we wanted to leave you with. We were gonna try, but we tried it. How can the IWAC sessions you attend or deliver be informed by or help the development of the WE series? So we want you to be inspired by this kickoff workshop as you go through the rest of it. And sort of think about like how can this conversation, which is just embarrassingly shallow when we start thinking about equity, because I feel like that in itself is a 2-day long workshop, at least one that I've led. And so thinking about like how can this kind of conversation energize you for the rest of the conference, and that reciprocity of bringing it back to us. And then nope, not that one, not that one. Our email addresses are up there. They're on some of the documents you've seen today. If you have questions or concerns, if you want to chat more, I have very limited plans for meals. So if you like to buy me food or a glass of wine, I'll be here. Thank you guys. Yeah. I'm gonna stop.